Hello and welcome to the Riled podcast. We're an affiliate of Out of Pocket Sports. I'm Riley Halt. I'm your host. My co-host is Presley Rhodes, and joining us today is my good friend, the senior producer, sports director for WTK Sports here, where we're hosting the podcast in the little podcast studio. Joseph, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. You got Bryson the other week.
Yeah, I know.
My turn.
Yeah. I just texted our little group chat and said who wants to come on the podcast, and you two were the first to answer. We got another guest coming next week from that group chat. But yeah, we got Joseph on this week. Joseph, you're a big Titans fan. You watch a lot of baseball, so we're gonna get into some Titans. We're gonna get into a little bit of baseball. We're gonna get into plenty of Vol talk because all three of us here at this table are Vols. So yeah, it's good show coming up for y'all. And yeah, I'm excited. So let's kick it off with the NFL draft right around the corner. Been an exciting off season, tons of people getting moved around. And me and Joseph, big Titans fans, been a little disappointing as far as the off season goes so far. I think that's fair to say, right?
Yeah. Uh, getting rid of Taylor Lewan, saw that coming. Getting rid of Bud Dupree, saw that coming. What I didn't see coming was Ben Jones. I figured they would have given him at least another year, but I guess he failed his physical or wasn't at peak performance where Titans wanted him. So him getting let go along with Taylor Lewan, a little bit of emotional roller coaster for us Titans fans. But then the fact that, Nate Davis, who's been with the team for the last 4 years, he didn't get signed. He moved on to the Bears. That entire offensive line is just gone. And I don't know who's going to protect. I don't even know who's going to play quarterback. Let's be honest. I think it's going to be Ryan Tannehill. But whoever's back there, there's not going to be anyone to protect them. And so it's kind of disappointing. You had some big offensive line prospects in free agency, specifically Orlando Brown, but he decided to go sign with the Bengals because their offensive line is just as bad. And so sucks for Tennessee. They missed out on a pretty good left tackle right there.
Yeah, they did get Andre Dillard though, who we don't is a bit of a question mark, right? But had a lot of potential and just was behind Dave. He was like kind of like the sixth man on one of the best offensive lines in the well, honestly, probably the best offensive line in the league with the Eagles. So, that's the answer at left tackle, I guess. We'll have to see how that goes. And
I have a feeling that they will find their starting left tackle in the draft.
You really think so?
I do. I mean, because if look at the draft board, obviously with the Panthers moving up, you're obviously going to probably have Bryce Young and CJ Stroud going at 1 and 2. And if that doesn't happen, then either the Panthers or the Texans made a mistake.
Well, all right, yeah, let's go into it a little bit on because that's another one of our questions we got lined up is so we had the Bears trade down with the Panthers. Bears trade down to number 9, get a big haul, get DJ Moore for Justin Fields, but the Panthers get the first overall pick and the chance to finally get a quarterback who they just really haven't had since Cam Newton was in his prime. So, where do we think the Panthers go at the first overall pick?
In my opinion, who they should go with is Bryce Young. He's the best overall prospect. He's the best quarterback prospect in this draft. I think he's more consistent than CJ Stroud. Just because he's 5'10" and 190 pounds should not scare you away from Bryce Young. I mean, he is going to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. I just watch him play at Alabama. His ability to evade tackles, to keep plays alive, his arm strength, despite his size, is impressive. And he's not playing with, small guys over there at Alabama. He's playing with NFL-sized offensive linemen and against NFL-sized defensive linemen because he plays in the SEC and he plays against the guys they have in practice. And pretty much almost every single person on that Alabama defense could go in the NFL, could go sometime into the NFL. So it's not like he's going up against chump competition. He's put his skills to the test against the best of the best, and he's proved undoubtedly that he is the best quarterback in this class. Now, CJ Stroud, he's got all the measurables. He had a great combine. He looks good. The problem with CJ Stroud is, are you going to get the CJ Stroud against that Northwestern game last year? Or are you going to get the CJ Stroud against that Georgia game in the playoffs? If you get the CJ Stroud in the Georgia game in the playoffs consistently, yeah, he should go number 1 overall because that guy was phenomenal. But consistency is key. He has not been consistent. That's why I think he's the second best quarterback prospect. And outside of those two, no other quarterbacks should be drafted in the first round, in my opinion.
In the first round.
Anthony Richardson is not a first round talent. Neither is Will Levis. You're going to reach. You're going to reach on those if you get him in the. You're going to reach.
I don't like Will Levis.
You're going to reach if you get him in the. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't say first round, but top 10. You
okay.
Top 10 makes sense.
You 100% reach. You get him in the top 10. If you get them in the late first round, okay, whatever. I still think they should fall to second or third round.
All right, I think that's a little more reasonable. First round is kind of tough.
Yeah, the entire round is a bit. I say late. Yeah.
Yeah, late first round. That's probably about where their value is. But
the issue with that is the fact that everyone that needs a quarterback is in that top 10. So they're gonna say, oh, we need to get one of the 3-4 quarterback prospects that are actually going to be decent in this draft, because outside of those 4, let's be honest, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Outside of those 4, there's nothing. And really outside of those 2, there's nothing. Because I still don't think Will Levis or Anthony Richardson are going to do anything for you to be worth a top 10 pick. But, you got teams like the Colts. You have teams like the Raiders. You have teams like Seattle, who, yes, just extended Geno, but you're going to need a contingency plan for after Geno, especially if the Geno from 2022 is not going to, be consistent in the next 3 years that he got his extension. So, and then their backup is Drew Lock, and you don't really want to, have your contingency plan on a guy that got benched in Denver, whose quarterback situation was just a mess before Russell Wilson, and even with Russell Wilson there.
Yeah. All right, Presley, where do you think? Where do you think the Panthers go with the first overall pick?
I think they'd be stupid not to pick Bryce Young.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, I agree with every single thing you said. It's all just there, I don't want to say in facts, but in facts.
Yeah.
You have Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, and those are the only 2 logical picks. They're all consistent. They're right there. Might as well take it.
Right.
There's nobody else that's going before them anyways.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm leaning more towards CJ Stroud as far as who they will pick. Not necessarily who they should pick. Who they will pick, though, I'm leaning towards CJ Stroud. Just prototypical Frank Reich likes bigger quarterbacks. CJ Stroud fits that mold.
Yeah.
He's got the ability. He's got all the ability that Bryce Young does, just on a bigger frame and less consistently.
I just don't think he's consistent.
So let's take a look at. I think there's no bigger winner right now in the draft than the Texans, because I think they're set regardless.
Yes, exactly.
The fact that there's 2 and they have the second overall pick, if Carolina decides to go the Frank Reich route, get the bigger guy, you know what? CJ Stroud, he's going number 1 overall. That Bryce Young just falls into your lap.
Yeah.
Okay. And he, again, like I said, I think he's the best quarterback prospect, and that's going to suck for everyone in the AFC South outside of Houston, because now you have Trevor Lawrence and Bryce Young in that division. Depending on who the Colts get, I mean, if
probably Will Levis or Anthony Richardson.
True, but yeah, that just sucks if it falls. But if it goes the other way, if Carolina decides to go Bryce Young, then you have CJ Stroud, who might be a little bit more of a project, sitting there at number 2. But I think he's good enough to start on day 1 and good enough to make a difference compared to what you had last year or the year before or the year before that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you're going to get better production out of any of those guys than, say, a Davis Mills, who was actually kind of impressive his first year. Not nearly as impressive this year. So, yeah, we'll see it. We'll see what the Texans end up with. As a Titans fan, I'm a little scared. I kind of hope that the Panthers go with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud is the one that falls, because I think there's a little more chance, a little more room for error there for the Texans if they do end up with CJ Stroud. There's a chance that just doesn't pan out. Or maybe they do a Texans thing and pick Will Levis and something, and then I'm gonna be jumping around like a little kid on draft night, all excited. So we can hope for that as Titans fans. But going down the draft board a little bit, you're gonna have about 10 picks, and then at pick number 11, we have the Tennessee Titans. Joseph Presley, what do we think the Tennessee Titans are going to do in this draft? Not specifically just in the first round, but what should their strategy be as far as what positions to address in the first couple rounds of the draft?
Well, let's see. We have about 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks until the NFL draft starts in April. So I think it really depends what happens in these next 2 to 3 weeks, because a lot can happen in NFL free agency. Now, if they go out and they get, a wide receiver, or they go out and they get an offensive lineman, specifically an offensive tackle here in free agency, someone that is going to start day one, who you're bringing in, you're signing to some big contract, and hopefully it's not a big contract like John Robinson did with big contracts. Hopefully it's a big contract where it's worth it and it's going to pan out.
Exactly.
But if you sign someone that kind of could manipulate, I think if they were to get anyone in free agency or via trade in these next 3 weeks, it's going to be an offensive weapon, wide receiver, specifically. So I think offensive tackle is going to be the move here in the first round, because this wide receiver class is so deep. You can afford to get to pick and to wait until the second round to get a wide receiver, especially if you look around the league. Wide receiver isn't really a real needy position for a lot of teams. You have teams like Titans, you have the teams like the Texans, teams like the Panthers that, okay, wide receiver, you might need to grab one or two. But it's not like, nobody has a star wide receiver. Nobody has enough wide receivers where they can afford to wait into the second round. So, and I think that a lot of the top guys in this class, they're going to go in the first round. But I think a lot of the great guys that are kind of under the top 2 or 3, they're going to fall to the second round, and Tennessee can snag it up right there. So if I had to pick, if I was Rand Carthon, general manager for the Tennessee Titans, I would definitely go offensive tackle. There's a couple of choices you could go with. Paris Johnson Jr. has been the biggest one I think we've seen, especially early on out of Ohio State. He's a really big guy, really long wingspan. I think he would fit well with the Titans. Honestly, I think any offensive tackle would fit well with the Titans at this point. But that would be my pick. Another guy is Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern. He's a little bit different. He's got shorter arms. Some of the scouting report on him is that maybe he wouldn't be able to use that reach to keep back the strength of NFL defensive edges. And that's a strong concern, especially when you look at what the Titans had last year with Dennis Daly, and the fact that he led up a record number of sacks last year, and was just an all-around disappointment there at left tackle, and really caused a lot of problems for the Tennessee Titans at quarterback. So if you want to go Skoronski, I don't know. I think you go Skoronski if Paris Johnson or the guy from Georgia, Broderick Jones, isn't there at 11.
Yeah, I'm surprised you have Broderick Jones that high. But Presley, where do you think the Titans go in the first round?
Well, I don't know the top prospects just off the top of my head, but I know they need an O-line bad.
Yeah,
If Tannehill's gonna be the quarterback, whoever it is, they're gonna have to have someone to stand there and protect him, because I know that they do not have that. My Twitter feed right now, whenever I click on the little Titans topic or whatever, it's just like, please God. That's literally what I saw this morning. It said, please God, someone. Like, just get something. I was like, yeah.
That's about
like,
yeah. Sounds like Titans
it.
Twitter. Sounds like Titans
it.
Twitter right now. Please God, make something happen.
It was kind of like Vol Twitter sometimes, baseball Twitter the other day.
Yes.
Like, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Someone do something.
Hey, Tennessee sports fans on Twitter, they get into it.
It's Tennessee.
They're very into it.
I hate that I don't have much to bring to say, but
no, yeah.
That's
offensive
what I
lineman.
know.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's a fact.
So something, Mel Kiper Jr., I don't remember if it was yesterday or early this morning. I saw it this morning. Posted something where it was like or Jim Wyatt posted on his Twitter. That's where I saw it. Where Mel Kiper said, because of the moves the Titans have made in free agency, they're already in a position to just pick the best available player. And the person he had the Titans picking was Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech, edge rusher. And I saw that and laughed. Little fact about me: I'm not a Mel Kiper fan.
No one, if you respect the NFL draft, no one should be a Mel Kiper fan.
Exactly. I can't stand Mel Kiper. I think a lot of his opinions are just wrong. And he's definitely wrong about this. I don't see the Titans picking an edge rusher at all. Do you just? I mean, that is their deepest position.
Yeah, you lose Bud Dupree, but you go out and sign
Arden Key.
Arden Key. You obviously are getting Harold Landry back, who will be a huge addition on the edge. And so you didn't really lose much at the position.
Rashad Weaver, who was
Rashad
the
Weaver,
backup, putting out starter level production.
Yeah, you don't lose anything at the production. You use the first round to either stock up on something that you've struggled with or stock up on positions that you lose. And you look at the Titans, those are the same positions. It's wide receiver and offensive line. Those are the two positions that the Titans absolutely need to fill. Those are the two most important positions for the Titans this offseason. After that, I would say probably linebacker with the loss of David Long. And you don't really have a veteran experienced starting linebacker on your roster right now. I mean,
Right.
Obviously you got the guy from the 49ers, Azeez Al-Shaair. You have Monty Rice, who's been in the league a little bit, but he's been dealing with injuries. He's still pretty young. And you have a couple of role players here and there, but you don't have like a huge starter. So my top three positions for the Titans are offensive lineman, wide receiver, inside linebacker to be specific. Outside linebacker, edge rushers, sort of the same thing. You have Harold Landry there. You got Arden Key there to kind of fill in those spots. But in terms of starters, I think linebacker is your third most needy. But yeah, there's no reason you should go waste your first round pick on an edge rusher because one, there's not going to be much room for him because you're going to obviously want to get Harold Landry on the field because you just gave him $50 million last year before he tore his ACL. You just signed Arden Key, so what are you going to do? Sign him and then not use him? Exactly. So there's no reason for you to go to edge rusher right here.
Yeah, I saw that and I just kind of laughed.
That's what it said?
Huh?
They needed an edge runner?
Edge rusher, yeah. That's what Mel Kiper said.
Oh, I thought.
Yeah. That's what Mel Kiper said, and that's where I just was like, oh my gosh, like, and I feel like that a lot with national media coverage of the Titans, right? It feels like they have just no clue what's going on. Only people I really see that cover the Titans well are Titans beat reporters. You got your Teron Davenports, your Jim Wyatt, who actually know what they're talking about. And Mike Keith, like when he came in, I got to interview him here. Even he was like, yeah, they probably need to go offensive line,
He knows what he's talking about.
So I could see the Titans going a couple places, right? Skoronski, maybe if he's still on the board, Paris Johnson, if he's still on the board, both guys, I think they'll take the best available lineman basically. And I think it's going to be one of three guys, right? If things are not going the Titans' way and offensive linemen are flying off the board, you'll lose probably Skoronski and Paris Johnson Jr., right? I think those will be the two guys that if things go badly, will be off the board for the Titans by the time they pick. At that point, I would like them to go Osiris Torrance. He's a guard from Florida and probably one of my favorite offensive linemen in this draft. Look at the way he plays. He's just very technical. He's very strong. He's really great at pushing the issue, when they're running the ball. I like Osiris Torrance a lot. I think he's a guy that you could come in and pretty much start immediately for the Titans, right? Because you look at the rest of that line, they're going to have Aaron Brewer probably at center. They're going to have Andre Dillard probably going to be the starter at left tackle. Nicholas Petit-Frere, who's probably going to be the starter at right tackle. Right guard, who are they starting at right guard, Joseph? Do you even know?
Right guard, well, that was Nate Davis's spot, but with him gone,
Oh, all right. So right there, that's where you could see Osiris Torrance play, and then in that left guard spot, what's his name? What's the guy that we drafted in the second round a couple years ago?
Are you talking about Dylan Radens?
Dylan Radens, who played better when he was at guard than he did at tackle.
He's too small to be a tackle.
Yeah. So I'd maybe like to see, like, that's the lineup we trot out there on week 1 is, yeah, you got Dillard, Radens, Brewer, Osiris Torrance, who we pick up in the draft, and Nicholas Petit Frere. Maybe that works at offensive line.
Well,
I don't know. I'm still not confident in
if
Brewer and
you-
Radens, but
If you go with Paris Johnson or any of those top tackles that are going to be there at around 10 to 12, you can start that, draft them as your left tackle. So say you draft Paris Johnson at your left tackle, then you move either Radens or Dillard into the left or right guards, because Dillard can play both. He's mostly a tackle, but he has experience playing guard as well, so he could play guard. And you put him at guard, you put Radens at the other guard. Obviously, you're gonna have Brewer at center, and then you're gonna have NPF over there at the right tackle position. That could also be a lineup as well. So
a lot of ways they could go.
I think you got to go offensive lineman regardless, in that number 11, unless you decide to trade down, and then get someone in free agency. I just don't see any value in not taking an offensive lineman right there.
Yeah. So, speaking of offensive linemen, let's move a little bit into where we think a couple of our Tennessee Volunteers will be going in this draft, right? Let's see when we think these guys are going to get picked. Starting off, like I said, speaking of offensive tackles, Darnell Wright, who had a really great showing at the Senior Bowl, was a show out at the Combine. You know, a lot of teams are liking what Darnell Wright brings to the table. He shot up draft boards, went from, maybe a consensus day 2 pick to like one of those guys that just might creep up there at the tail end of round 1. So where do we think that Darnell Wright is going to go?
I think he could go late round 1.
Yeah.
And I want him to.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going to pull for him, but I think he really showed out. And like you said, a lot of teams, I saw his name on a couple of, what was it? Like Twitter lists of like people, I don't know, like writers or whatever have made themselves. And he was on there. And I was like, good. I think that's where he should be.
Yeah. I think you look at his production against someone like the top people he's played against, right? He played against Will Anderson.
Yeah.
And locked Will Anderson down. Like, Will Anderson was a non-factor in that Tennessee game, and his matchup was Darnell Wright.
I think he's gonna go first round.
Yeah, and I see that. I've kind of convinced myself of that more and more. You look at like teams at the tail end of the round, the Chiefs maybe, just lost Orlando Brown. I could see them making a move for and going and getting another Tennessee offensive lineman, pair up with Trey Smith. On the line, and going to get Darnell Wright at pick what it would be like pick 31. Yeah. So Joseph, what do you think?
Darnell Wright plays right tackle. It's where, he could play both tackle positions. He did it while he was at Tennessee, but his most comfortable position is at right tackle. And so you got to look at teams that need a right tackle. So I think most mock drafts have them around that 17 to 20, 21 area. Some teams in that area, the Steelers, who could 100% use a right tackle and need every offensive lineman that they could find, which would be good because you have a pretty young team around them with Kenny Pickett at quarterback going into his second year. You obviously have the young wide receivers with George Pickens. You have the young running back with Najee Harris. I think adding another young offensive lineman and maybe a couple more to that group would actually be really beneficial to Steelers. And I think that would really help with their offense, because last year you saw Najee Harris struggle a ton early. Actually struggled throughout the entire year, but specifically early. And it's because the offensive lineman wasn't getting any push. He had rarely any holes to get through, and he was getting hit in the backfield. Same kind of deal you saw with Derrick Henry over the last 2 seasons with that Tennessee offensive line. So I think the Steelers will be a really good landing point. Another good landing point is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just lost a lot of their offense as well, including Tom Brady, a lot of their offensive linemen. I think Darnell Wright would be a good fit for them, trying to transition now that you have Baker Mayfield there at quarterback. He's a guy that likes to scramble a little bit at times, and maybe not like, take off running like a Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields, but he likes to move around the pocket, and he likes to create his own plays with his legs as well as his arm. So I think Darnell Wright adding him to that Tampa Bay Bucks offensive line could be beneficial for Baker, who's now in a prove-it year with that 1-year deal with Tampa Bay.
Yeah. So you actually think he'll go
Mid-round.
Mid-round.
Yeah. I think and listen, if Tennessee, I mentioned earlier, if the Titans were to trade back out of that number 11 spot to try and get more capital, maybe
That's
in the second or third round.
Great pick.
If you can get down there to that 17 to 21, 22 area, and Darnell Wright is there, I mean, you're taking a big risk by doing this because you're obviously losing, guys like Paris Johnson Jr. and Roderick Jones and Peter Skorinsky. But if you want to take that risk, and I don't know, I don't really know Rand Carthon enough to know if this is something that's even on his mind. But if you want to take that risk, trade back, and then try to go for a guy like Darnell Wright, I think it would be a good move. I think it'd be a pretty solid move. It'd be risky because if he's not there, you're screwed. But it's an option. So I think Darnell Wright has definitely played himself into the middle round of the first round.
Yeah, I'm surprised. He's still kind of borderline first round for me. But
yeah,
another guy that's been talked about going in the first round, talked about going early second round, is the speedster, Mr. Five Tutties himself, Jalen Hyatt. Where do we think number 11 is going?
Not in the first round.
Not in the first round.
Nope.
Joseph says it.
Not at all.
Where is he going? Where's he going, Joseph?
Well, I would say he would be a solid mid-second, a very solid mid-second. I think you'd have great value for Jalen Hyatt in the third, but I don't think he goes past that mid-second. I don't think he goes higher than the mid-second. You have a chance that he might get there early in the second round, kind of like a DK Metcalf or an AJ Brown did. Obviously, he's a different type of receiver than those two, but those were two really highly touted guys in that 2019 draft that could work, that they had a lot of talent, but there was a lot ahead of them. There's a lot ahead of Jalen Hyatt, despite how good he was, despite winning the Biletnikoff. There's a lot ahead of him with Quentin Johnson, Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I think 1 year should not. He had 1 year of production at Tennessee. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was his speed, but a lot of that was the style of offense that Tennessee ran. Not every NFL team is going to run that style of offense. It's going to be able to use his speed and his ability to mix in different routes and play around with different coverages on the defense like Tennessee did. I don't think that there are a lot of teams also looking for a wide receiver that are going to reach for him there in the first round. So I say he probably goes mid to late second.
Presley?
I have late second.
Late second?
It hurts me to say that, though.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of people ahead of him. Like you said, Tennessee, it's a whole different style, especially, and he had 1 year.
Yeah.
And I wish he had more. It, makes me sad, kind of.
Yeah.
I know it shouldn't, but it does. But he really did. He showed out. Not that he didn't show out, but he showed out 1 year.
Yeah.
And you can't just. I mean, he wouldn't go first round with that.
Teams I think that Jalen Hyatt would fit well with. Number one is the Chiefs. They're losing McCole Hardman to free agency. They're lost a little bit of that speed, especially getting rid of Tyreek Hill last year. And you have kind of a young core, but you have a really good quarterback and Patrick Mahomes. You have a good tight end. You have a solid offensive line. You have a pretty solid defense. It's not the best defense. It's not the worst defense. Really solid, really young defense. And you have Andy Reid, a coach that loves scheming up different things on offense. Where did Jalen Hyatt succeed with Tennessee last year? And why did he win the Biletnikoff? Because he was able to get schemed up in different looks on offense, whether it was out of the bunch, whether it was in the slot, whether it was on the outside, whether it was, whatever route you wanted to run, he could run it and he could hide anywhere. And Andy Reid is probably the best offensive coach at drawing those up. And so I think the Chiefs would be a really good landing spot. Obviously, they like their young Tennessee guys, what they got out of Trey Smith.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll reach for him in the first round. I doubt it, but you could definitely see him getting in the second round. It would have to be a late second round pick, which is kind of right where I think that his talent-wise, where he could fall. Another team is the Rams. They obviously lost a lot of wide receiver talent. And Sean McVay is another one of those offensive minds that are really good at scheming up different looks for guys. And I think he could really be beneficial, giving the Rams some extra speed. Now that, they'll have Cooper Kupp obviously back, but they really don't have much guys outside of Cooper Kupp. And so I think Jalen Hyatt would bring a different element to that offense as well.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think?
There's a little run of teams in the middle of the or like mid to late first round that I think could be potential to select a wide receiver in the first round, right? You got the Chargers, who need to start looking towards the future. Keenan Allen getting older, his production is taking.
They could also use some speed too.
Yes,
that's another
that.
team like the Rams.
That's true.
They're another team just like the Rams.
But I think the Chargers would rather bank on him being available in the second round. You got the Baltimore, another team that could use a wide receiver, right? Especially if they do keep Lamar Jackson, they're gonna want to keep him happy, and they're gonna want to give him some weapons back there. Minnesota losing Adam Thielen, maybe we see them go wide receiver to replace him. The Giants at 25, skip over Jacksonville because they're kind of set. But the Giants at 25, another team that could use a wide receiver. Dallas at 26, who up until they signed Brandon Cooks were definitely in the mix there as well. And then, like you mentioned, Kansas City could also definitely use help at wide receiver, losing Miko Hardman, losing Juju Smith-Schuster, two of the guys they like to use a lot last year. So a lot of teams that I think need wide receiver, not a lot of teams that I think will actually end up going wide receiver in the draft, right? Because there are only so many of those tier one guys. You got Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith-Njigba,
Jordan Addison from USC,
Jordan Addison,
Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers. I said Zay Jones. Zay Flowers. A lot of people like his upside. You got Josh Downs. That's another guy that a lot of people like, especially, maybe as a slot guy. And then you got Jalen Hyatt, right? Who's kind of on that like second tier behind those tier one guys who, have all the physical tools and have had some of the production that you want. Jalen Hyatt, right, just doesn't quite have all of the film that you would want on a receiver. He has like zero experience playing against press coverage. Now, for certain guys, that wasn't it. They had zero experience playing press coverage. I forget who it was, but it was one of these like top, like Justin Jefferson or just Jamar Chase, somebody crazy like that had like zero experience playing against press coverage in college, went to the NFL, obviously has had no problem. So it'll be a matter of how does Jalen Hyatt translate once he does get to the NFL level. A lot of upside with Jalen Hyatt, also a lot of downside. He's a high ceiling, low floor type pick, high risk, high reward. But if he does pay out, he will be one of those guys that can just take the top off of defense.
Yeah.
And could potentially be like a just a really good second option for any team. So after Jalen Hyatt and Darnell Wright, you got this kind of like tier two of Tennessee guys, two defensive guys and two offensive guys left that will probably get picked in the draft, right? You got Byron Young, defensive lineman. Where do we think Byron Young is going to go?
I think Byron Young had a really good combine.
Mm-hmm.
His interviews went well. His workouts went well. I don't know. He's probably a day 2 pick. I would say around maybe 3rd, 4th round. I know fourth round is a day 3 pick, but I think he could sneak up into that 3rd round, especially with how important edge rushers are in today's game, in today's NFL. But I would probably bank around that 3rd, 4th. I would probably, if I had to put money on it, I would say 4th, but I think he could sneak up into the 3rd.
Wow. Yeah, you've got him low.
Yeah, I just think.
What would you say?
I think he's early 3rd to late 2nd.
I wouldn't put him in 2nd.
I think he could sneak up to the 2nd round. There's not just a ton of this is not a super deep class for defensive linemen.
I know combine is,
and his combine was super impressive.
But you also got to think there's not that many teams that are like right now that are like, okay, edge rusher. I mean, you have a couple obviously, and listen, no offense to Byron Young, but there's far better options right now in this class for edge rusher. And so I think it might push him back into the fact that I think a majority of this class is going to be some of those big guys. Like you need some of those big positions. I mean, offensive lineman, wide receiver, linebacker. Those are the guys that are going to go first. So I think it might knock him back a little bit, but he's got every talent in the world to go into the second round, early third round. But I think
You're saying just the way
I just think the way
teams
the
are going to be picking.
I think the way the team's going to be picking, I think it'll slide him down, and he's going to be if you get him in the fourth round on day 3, that's tremendous value right there.
Yeah.
Great value, because listen, he might not ever be the guy that's going to go out there and lead the league in sacks.
Yeah,
probably not. Odds are it's not going to happen, because those guys are 1 in a million. You know, your guys like JJ Watt, your guys like TJ Watt, your guys like Myles Garrett, one in a million. But having a consistent edge rusher that can just get pressure, maybe not have the sack numbers, but just can constantly win battles and get into the backfield. I think he's a guy that can do that. He's definitely got the size. He's definitely got the speed. But I just think for the way this draft class is kind of playing out, I think a fourth round, early fourth round. And I'm saying fourth round. I'm not saying like last pick in the fourth round. I'm saying like early fourth round. Mid to late third round is probably where he fits in nicely.
I would stake on him getting picked in the third round. I think that is probably where he'll end up falling. You know, early third to mid third is where I'm kind of feeling in my gut where he's gonna go. A lot of teams that I think could just, you know, he's a high upside pick, right? He's one of the guys that you can get in there, and he's probably gonna get you consistent pressure. So. Maybe a team that's got like a older guy, a veteran that they're gonna, you know, want to move on from here soon, or a guy that's at like the end of his contract that you know is gonna want some money. You don't want to pay him. Kind of pull the Titans strategy, right? Oh, somebody needs a contract. Let's draft his replacement. So I think you could see that with Byron Young. Him fall into a situation like that where he's just kind of like he kind of sits for a year, doesn't get much time, and then next year he kind of gets unleashed. And I think that's probably where he'll end up going, and about where I see him going in late third, mid third, early third, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So the other, I feel bad calling him this because before this season he was the wide receiver for the Vols, Cedric Tillman, who you know, disappointing year for him. Couldn't stay on the field. When he was on the field, wasn't just insane production, but obviously everybody saw what he could do last year, and he is the more prototypical receiver, right? Your guy that's going to go up and fight for jump balls and you know, win those battles. He's a guy that can beat defensive backs. You got where do we see Cedric Tillman going? Because he's a bit of an interesting case, right?
This
is tough.
I think Tillman, I think he's going to fall to day 3. I'm just going to be honest. He obviously the production was there his junior year. His senior year, he's dealing with the injury, wasn't on the field a lot, didn't really get to showcase himself. But obviously, you know, the talent is there. I just think with how deep this wide receiver class is, with how the game's going more towards speed rather than that big physical guy, unless you have a guy like Quentin Johnson who can combine both, which is like insane, or a guy like, you know, if you're looking guys like in the NFL, like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, who can combine both speed and size. Cedric Tillman, unfortunately, he's not the fastest. I mean, he's still got speed. I think he had a top. He was one of the top 4 of the best wide receiver athletically at the combine. Jalen Hyatt was number 1. Cedric Tillman was number 4 in terms of athlete grades that they get at the combine.
Tested,
But I think he's a guy that people are going to be, or teams are going to be really kind of iffy about, just because of the injury, just because the fact that you didn't really see him. He hasn't really played a lot of football in the past year and a half. So it'll be interesting where he goes, but I'm pretty sure he'll fall to day 3. I would say 4th, maybe 5th round if he really slides. I don't know how his interviews have gone, because that's a really big part of it. But I think the injury nag is going to hurt him in this draft.
Presley, you got him going same kind of day 3.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the same. I'm gonna agree with you on this one. I think he's probably late round 4 type of pick that somebody goes out, gets him, and you know, hopes for the best as far as, you know, the way he tested athletically and what they've seen from him on tape in years prior. For our second to last guy, because I feel like saving the most interesting one for last, we'll go with Jeremy Banks, somebody who, God, Tennessee fans know about Jeremy Banks, man. But where do we think he slots in the NFL draft?
6, 7 to undrafted. Listen, no offense to Jeremy Banks. He's just
I said 7. Just straight up 7.
He's a good linebacker. I don't think he'll ever start in the NFL. I just don't, because you want to start. Linebacker is one of the hardest positions in the NFL to be consistently good at.
Yeah.
And you have to be the top tier of the top tier in order to make a difference in the NFL at the inside linebacker position, which is what Jeremy Banks does. Some things he does good. He does good rushing the passer, but you don't see a lot of teams rushing their inside linebackers because that's what you go and draft edge guys and outside linebackers for. So you're already taking away one of his best skills. He's not the biggest guy. He's not. I mean, he's pretty athletic, but in terms of NFL linebacker, he's probably middle of the pack, very low of the pack in terms of athletic ability. So, and then obviously you have the off the field issues. We saw it affect Tennessee this season, the South Carolina game. Didn't really know exactly what happened. He's obviously had it in the past where he got kicked off the team and then brought back. So I think he's a guy that's probably going to go undrafted, if not in one of the late 2 rounds.
You feel the same 7th round, you said?
I said 7th, yeah. I feel like it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter, but like the off the field stuff.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we've seen guys. We've seen guys slide like that before, right? Laramie Tunsil is like one of the primary examples.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Simmons, that's the only reason he fell to the Titans was that video.
Yeah, in his ACL.
Yeah, in the ACL. So you see things like that do affect how players get drafted. I think he's probably late 6th, 7th round pick type of guy. Like you mentioned, he's very, very good at rushing the passer. I think he's a great guy that if somebody wants to bring in, he's kind of like that third guy that somebody can bring in for like a blitz package or something like that. I think he'd be a great guy for that. I think he'll be a good special teams player. I think he has a lot of upside to bring in that way. So I think there's a lot of upside to picking Jeremy Banks, but not a whole but same kind of thing. There's kind of a low floor there. You don't really know how he's going to transition. You don't know if he's actually going to help your team win games. Like there's a lot of issues, but linebacker is a position that tends to get picked a lot in those late couple rounds, just because people like to get those, guys that can, come in and help on blitz packages or things like that.
And I think linebacker is a really easy position to get depth at in those late rounds.
Yes,
because you might not get the peak of the peak guy, but you can get a guy that you're going to bring in for special teams or a guy that you're going to bring in for 5 to 10 snaps when your star guy needs a break or just in case of an injury. And just to kind of fill out the roster. And so it's really, if he does get drafted, I think it'll be special teams purposes. And I think that's pretty much about where Jeremy Banks is going to end up in the NFL.
I think it is clear that he has a lot. He brought a lot to Tennessee defensive locker room for sure. Because like you mentioned, when he wasn't out there for that South Carolina game, that's the worst the defense looked all season.
Horrible.
They looked deflated. They did look lack of effort. I mean, it just wasn't pretty. So I think he's a guy that brings a lot of spirit, energy to the locker room. He's gonna be a good guy for people to pick on special teams. So for our final, last but not least player that we're going to talk about here, and probably the most interesting case, Hendon Hooker, quarterback, probably just about a legend for the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee legend, Hendon Hooker. Where do we think that old QB is going to go?
Okay. Hendon Hooker has the talent to be a late first round pick.
Yep.
Now, then you got to factor in everything around Hendon Hooker. The fact that he tore his ACL back in November, the fact that he didn't get to throw at the combine, he's probably not going to get to throw at Tennessee's pro day. That's going to slide him back. At least into the second round. I don't think Hendon Hooker goes first round. There are a couple mock drafts out there that have him very late first round. I just don't see it. I don't think it's going to happen. The fact that he's a 25-year-old quarterback coming off an ACL is going to be detrimental to his draft stock. But the fact that he went to the combine, despite not being able to compete in it, his interviews apparently went great. I heard several rumors that he was the best interview out of everybody, not just quarterbacks, out of everybody for a lot of teams. And that they were really impressed with his board work, which is basically where they throw a formation or a play up on the board, and they have him tell you, how would you run it? What are you supposed to do here? Who's the guy to go to, or what do you see? And he aced that. And he's a really smart guy, really, really smart guy. And so I think that's going to benefit him a lot. The other thing is the fact that he has the on-field production at Tennessee. I mean, he proved that he can put the numbers up, and he can do the things that he says he can do, and the things that he sees, he can physically do it on the field, which is another big plus for him. I think with Hendon Hooker, I think you're looking at a second round would be a reach. I would say he's going to fall probably to the early to mid third round, in my opinion, just because you don't have that many teams who are quarterback needy. Especially, you have a lot of teams that have their starters and their backups kind of solidified. Obviously, there's probably about 10. I would say about 10 teams that need a starter and or a backup in that round. And I don't know if any of them are going to reach because of that injury or because of some other needs. But if you can get Hendon Hooker in the third round, I think you're getting tremendous value right there. And I know I said that about a lot of these Tennessee guys, but the fact is this class out of Tennessee is just the best class I think we've seen since, the Josh Dobbs, Alvin Kamara class of a couple years ago in 2017? Is that when that was? 2018?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, right before Jeremy Pruitt,
2017. 17 or 18. I can't think of off the top of my head. Presley?
I think no later than late third round. Like you said, his injury pushed him back. I think the production he showed this season, and then, like you said, the interviews, and just, I don't want to say who he is because I know, like, his actual playing goes a long way too, but, like, at that same time, I feel like coaches can see the talent and the potential in him. So I think that kind of gives him a little bit earlier, but like I said, I don't see him going first round just because of his injury.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he could have been.
Yeah, but barring the injury, I think he was kind of so, like, right, with these quarterbacks, you've got your top four guys. Consensus, it's going to be Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in that 1A, 1B, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, and then beyond that, it's like, it's kind of the Wild West, right?
I think Hendon Hooker is a better NFL prospect today than either Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, did you not look at Richardson or Levis in the combine, blah, 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 whatever. It doesn't matter. Look at on the field production. Yeah. Look at what they did against the defense. Look what they did in an actual game when it mattered, when it counted. Which one of them succeeded? Out of those three, who succeeded? Yeah. Not Richardson, not Levis. It was Hendon Hooker, and he succeeded on the biggest stages against Alabama and probably the most important game of his career, let's be honest. Yeah. And, he proved that he can be there. Will Levis didn't prove anything. And I know that Will Levis was, the offensive coordinator's fault. It was the offensive scheme. Hendon Hooker had Josh Heupel. Well, yeah. Who cares? He just because you have the scheme in front of you doesn't mean it's going to click automatically. I mean, you actually have to go out there and make the throws. Will Levis didn't make the throws. Anthony Richardson didn't make the throws. Hendon Hooker made the throws. He was the better quarterback. I think he's the better prospect. But the fact that he's 25 and the fact that he's coming off an ACL, no one's thinking about Hendon Hooker because Anthony Richardson had the best combine. He had a Zach Wilson moment. Will Levis had a Zach Wilson moment throwing the ball 50 miles an hour or whatever it was at the combine.
Yeah.
So teams are going to make the same mistake they do always because they see a quarterback that looks like a high-rated prospect because they're big and they're physical and they're strong and they're fast. But if you can't make the throws on the field in the actual game when it counts, it doesn't really matter.
The drafting of Josh Allen and its consequences, man.
What do you think?
I'm gonna say, because like you hear these reports, right, come from the the aether that reports are saying Hendon Hooker won't make it out of the second round, and
Yeah.
or Hendon Hooker won't make it out of the early second round, and it's like, yeah, who really knows though?
Yeah, I mean, you see that all the time. Look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was like, "Oh, this guy's gonna be easy first round pick, Heisman winner. He's electric on the field." He didn't go all the way till 32 to the Ravens,
mhm,
and the Ravens just took a chance on him. It's not
Yeah.
like they were like, "Oh yeah, this is our guy from the start." No, the Ravens passed on him the first time
mhm,
because the Ravens had 2 picks in that first round that year, and they passed on him the first time,
yeah,
and so then they came back and got him again. So, it's these mock drafts, these projections, until you get to draft night, you really don't know
You
where
don't know.
anybody's going to go.
Nobody knows.
And the same thing happened with Malik Willis, right? He was like,
he was
this is the
he was a
this
first
is
round
the
pick. Yeah.
this is the best quarterback in the draft. He doesn't go until the the third round.
Yeah.
And the only reason he went in the third round is because the Titans were like, well,
Why not?
here's this guy that was high on everybody's boards, and he's just sitting here for us. Might as well.
Yeah.
And obviously, we see why he fell so far last year, but yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with Hendon Hooker. I don't think he'll end up going second round. I think he's probably late third, maybe even day 3 pick. I think there's a potential for him to fall pretty far. But
Listen,
that's just the nature of it, right? He's old and he's coming off an ACL.
He is old.
He might be the most cerebral, best football IQ in the entire draft.
I feel like someone might pick him up. I don't know. That's just me wanting to. I feel like that's just me wanting him to be earlier.
Listen, I know this is kind of a odd comparison, but he's Josh Dobbs. Okay, listen, he's this year's Josh Dobbs.
I've heard that before.
He's an older quarterback. Really, really smart. The only difference between Josh Dobbs and Hendon Hooker, I think Josh Dobbs was a little younger. I think Josh Dobbs was his junior year when he went in.
Mhm.
But Josh Dobbs also isn't on an injury. Josh Dobbs went in the 6th round to the Steelers, I think, back in 2017. And so, yeah, Hendon Hooker might be a better on the field quarterback in terms of throwing the ball. Josh Dobbs was, and look, Josh Dobbs was no slouch at the quarterback position. He was a really good college quarterback. But
I think it's fair to say though that Hendon Hooker had better production in college.
Yeah.
He's the better NFL prospect.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is they're very similar, very, very similar in play style, very similar in production. I think Hendon Hooker does have the edge there, but Josh Dobbs was that good and fell all the way. Now I think Josh Dobbs' draft class was a little better than this class in terms of quarterback wise, but still, I think if your teams aren't going to reach for a guy that they probably can get on day 3.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what's going to happen.
And if he can go to the Tennessee Titans, I will be happy to have Hendon Hooker as their backup.
I will be rejoicing.
I would be so happy.
Yeah, because for some reason they let Josh Dobbs walk.
That made no sense to me. Back to the Browns for him.
Yeah, but anyway, I'll wrap up our NFL draft talk. So yeah, a lot of interesting things going on there. I've said this before. It's my favorite sports event of the entire year. I love the NFL draft. I literally stay up all day that whole weekend and just watch the draft unfold. But we'll move on and we'll wrap it up with a little March Madness update. So how we think it's gonna go for these for the remaining 2 teams, that we followed, the Tennessee Volunteers and the Tennessee Lady Volunteers. Both make it to the Sweet 16. One of 4 schools to have that happen this year, with Miami, UConn, and UCLA also having both their men's and women's basketball team go to the Sweet 16. So what do we think these Vols, both of them, we'll each go and say what we feel about both of them, how we think they'll fare in the Sweet 16?
I think both teams, more specifically the men's, have a silver platter in front of them that just says Final Four on it.
Yeah.
I agree.
They have the perfect pathway with number 1 Purdue in the East going down, with number 2 Marquette in the East going down, and then Michigan State, who is the number 3, or Kansas State, excuse me, the number 3 in the East. They're playing Michigan State in the Sweet 16, and that is who the Tennessee will face in the Elite 8. if they were to get past FAU. And I think they match up really well with FAU because one, Tennessee has proven in this tournament they're the most physical team. They're the most physically dominant team. They will bully you until you give up. They did that with Duke, and they're going to do it to every opponent now that's kind of their winning formula. FAU is a really small team. They have one guy who's 6'8", one guy who's 7 foot, but other than that, all of their basketball players are 6'4" and shorter. 6'4" and shorter. Tennessee can absolutely win that game in terms of physicality. Now, Tennessee does have some issues letting smaller, faster teams kind of get ahead of them really early, and then they fall behind, and then that slow, dominant way of winning doesn't really work. But I think Tennessee right now has got a lot of momentum. If they can win the rebound battle, I think they're going to have an easy path past FAU, and then they're going to be able to face either Kansas State or Michigan State, which they'll have a little bit more trouble there. And the kind of physicality will match up a little better than it has versus some of these other teams. But I think that path to the Final Four is wide open.
Same.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think we're too physical for them.
Yeah, FAU looks sloppy against Memphis at best,
and they shouldn't have won that game.
Tennessee, they did. They lost that game, man.
Tennessee should probably be playing Memphis right now.
I agree.
Unless Memphis were to lose to Farley Dickinson,
but
I doubt that would.
I wouldn't have seen that.
I think both of them would have handled Farley Dickinson. I mean, that's not. It's they weren't okay. Yeah, they beat Purdue. Okay, but. Yeah, I see Tennessee. I totally agree. I think they have a silver platter to the Final Four. I think they can out physical and use that suffocating style of defense on either Michigan State or Kansas State, whoever ends up being there. Tennessee, the men's team, definitely silver platter to the Final Four.
Yeah.
I think they should make it there, and if they make it there, who they match up against, it'll be interesting to see how they handle it with because obviously there's been so much going into the season, losing Zakai Ziegler, a lot of doubters coming into the season for them, but
chance that they could see Alabama again in the Final Four.
I'd love to see that. I want to see
that.
I want to see the rematch this time without Zakai Ziegler. But what about the women's
Lady
team?
Vols.
Women's team.
See, they're gonna play Virginia Tech and Seattle in their Sweet 16, and if you remember earlier in the season, they lost to Virginia Tech by 3, but they didn't have. They were missing. I think they were missing Rickea Jackson in that game.
Rickea Jackson wasn't playing.
I think Rickea Jackson was not in that game. I could be wrong about that, but I know they were missing. They were missing some of their players on the floor. And right now, the Lady Vols have the most momentum in this tournament. They do. And the SEC tournament is the reason for that. The fact that they beat LSU, I think, gave them all the confidence in the world. The fact that they hung in with South Carolina for 3/4 of that game. And made it a decent championship game for majority of the time. I gave them confidence. They've dominated their first 2 opponents.
Yes.
Like
killed them.
Killed them. 94 or 95-50 and 94-47 are their 2 scores.
They're on a roll.
They have not showed that they're slowing down. They have not showed that they're going to be stopped. And you know what? Virginia Tech is a team that will give them some trouble. Lady Vols have had trouble with ranked teams over the years or over the season, LSU being their only ranked win of the season. But I think right now the momentum is with the Lady Vols, and if they want to get to the Elite 8, it's right there. They just got to keep playing the way they've been playing.
Yeah,
I agree.
I completely agree. Yeah, Rickea Jackson, Jordan Horston, that duo.
It runs through them.
Yes,
it runs
exactly.
through them.
They've been ridiculous these past couple of games. Jordan Horston's been playing at a different level. It's like we've seen from her. She enters that clutch mode and just does it. So that's about all the time we got. Our episode. Joseph, thank you for coming on. It was good time having you, brother.
Love talking NFL.
Oh yeah. So
me too.
Okay, Presley. All right.
Wait, I want to say something.
Say something.
I want everybody to know Riley did not get me this jersey for my birthday, but my stepdad did. So thank you, Jason.
I did not get her the jersey.
Thank you.
I told her I wasn't going to get her the jersey. But that's about all the time we have. We appreciate you all for watching. We appreciate Joseph for coming on. So yeah, check out all our socials, Out of Pocket Sports. We'll have it all linked. So we appreciate you all for watching, and thanks.
Thank
See you
you
next time.
Thanks.
Okay, all right.